Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at risers and fallers from the Combine Tight End Edition. So we're going to be taking a look at their measurables, how they performed in the individual drills, take a look at some of their athleticism scores, some predictive advanced stats, as well as some red flags in terms of I've done 10 years of data entry from 2015 through 2025, going to now be 2026, so going to be 11 years, of every tight end drafted, and a drop off in wave when average thresholds for athleticism in terms of speed score, agility score, and burst score are not met. I must say, this is extremely predictive, and tight ends especially are the most affected by if they don't meet these certain athleticism thresholds. So take this information very seriously because there is serious correlation. And I'm going to explain how much there is. So we're going to take a look at three risers as well as three fallers. I'm not going to be mentioning everyone in this list, but you can pause it and take a look at this at the individual players if you'd like. Winners, we have Kenyon Sadiq. He was already a first-round pick in most people's minds, and if there was any doubt, that has been entirely removed. So he ended up being 6'3", 241 pounds with a 30.1 BMI. 10-inch hands, was tied for the second largest in the class. 31.5-inch arms, ran a 4.39 and 1.54 split, which is insane, with a 127.4 speed score to show for it. Incredibly impressive. And we'll get into what percentile that is later. A 43.5-inch vertical, which was the most in years and years and years at the Combine, before Eli Stowers decided to break that. But, you know, still very impressive vertical. And an 11.1 broad jump, was second highest in the class as well. Didn't do the 3-cone or the 20-yard shuttle, but did 26 bench reps. This guy is not making it out of the first round. There is no way. Another winner, Eli Stowers. He ended up being 6'4", 239 pounds with a 29.1 BMI, 9.75 hands, 32.63 arms, ran a 4.51 with a 1.59 split. Both are very impressive numbers, with a 114.9 speed score, which is second best in the class. Now, 45.5-inch vertical, I believe it was about 10 plus years. No one, regardless of position, irrespective of position, has jumped 45.5 in the 10 years. Insane. An 11.3 broad jump also led the class. He didn't do the rest of the drills, but he is definitely a riser after that impressive showing of athleticism. Then we have Eli Raridon, another guy who I was pretty impressed by. So with him, it's more so, rather than the individual numbers in and of themselves in terms of the 40 time and this and that, it's some of the measurables when you account for it. So he ended up being 6'6", 245 pounds. Now, that is a 28.3 BMI, which is the smallest in the class, but that's not too bad. Think Kyle Pitts in terms of, height and weight. But 10.75 hands are easily the best in the class, with 32.75 arm length, which is going to be third best in the class, I believe. Yep. With a 4.6 240-yard dash time and a 1.60 10-yard split. That's actually very impressive for somebody of his size. That's a 109.8 speed score, which is plenty fine. A 36.0 vertical and a 10.3 broad jump. Only had 20 bench reps, but the bench rep isn't really predictive, so take that with a grain of salt. I don't really care about that as much. But three players who I think hurt their draft stock potentially. RJ Maryland. So 6'4", 236 is a 28.7 BMI. That's fine, but 9-inch hands was second lowest in the class. Not particularly great. 32.25 arms, 4.51 40 is good, as well as a 1.64 10-yard split. We like that, which is 113.5 speed score. Unfortunately, only had a 33.0 vertical. That is easily the worst in the class. And a 10.2 broad jump isn't particularly great either. Another player who I thought kind of hurt himself is Josh Cuevas. So he ended up being 6'3", 245 at a 30.6 BMI, 9.63 hands, but only 30.63 arm length. That is second lowest in the class, not particularly great. But he also had a 4.65 40 with a 1.65 split. That's only a 102.9 speed score. That's not particularly great. But 34.0 vertical, as well as a 9.10 broad jump, not particularly great. A 7.37 3-cone drill was middle of the pack. A 4.38 20-yard shuttle, same applies. Didn't do the bench reps. But another player who I thought hurt himself potentially is Riley Nowakowski. He ended up being 6'2", 250 pounds. Now, as far as for a BMI, that's a 32.1. That's hefty. So no issues as far as being too small or anything, but unfortunately, 8.75 hands are worst in the class by far. 31.5-inch arm length as well. Ran a 4.66 40-yard dash at a 1.70 splits. It's 102.7 speed score. 33.5-inch vertical and a 9.11 broad jump, so not particularly great in the vertical or the broad jump either, and didn't do the rest of the drills. Moving on to a couple of advanced stats as well as some advanced athleticism. Once again, I'm going to be taking a look at a couple risers and a couple of potential fallers here. It's going to be the same players, though, because a lot of this is based off the numbers previously mentioned. So, winners. Easily Kenyon Sadiq. So, 21.7 collegiate dominator, that's his market share of the team's total yards and touchdowns. Isn't particularly dominant. Not bad, though. 70th percentile for sure. Not elite like you would potentially usually see from a first-round tight end, but his production isn't really what's getting him into the first round. It's the potential. What potential are we mentioning? Well, you remember his 127.4 speed score, and I said to note that that's 100th percentile among collegiate tight end prospects. That's crazy. But not only that, no. His 142.6 burst score is also 100th percentile. So we probably have never seen an athlete quite like him ever, from the tight end position at least. Insane. Nothing to show, for the agility drill or the percentile for that. But in terms of catch radius, his 10.5 is 99th percentile. So also just about as good as we've ever seen. Another winner, like I mentioned, is Eli Stowers. He ended up having a 22.0 collegiate dominator rating, which is 71st percentile. His 114.9 speed score is 95th percentile. So while it doesn't look quite as ridiculous, and it is ridiculous as Kenyon Sadiq's was, that's still very, very impressive. But his burst score is even better because, remember, he had the better vertical and broad jump slightly, but both were elite. So his 147.1 is also 100th percentile. But not only that, his 10.72 catch radius is also 99th percentile. Very impressive stuff. Another player who I kind of like here is Tanner Koziol. So he has a 27.10 collegiate dominator rating, which is 84th percentile. That is best among this class, from the tight end position at least. A 104.7 speed score is 78th percentile. Not particularly great from him as far as that's concerned, but his burst score of 124.9 is 85th percentile, so pretty impressive. And his 10.18 catch radius is also 83rd percentile. A couple players, the same three players that I mentioned from earlier, and that I think kind of are going to be fallers from now on, are likely to be RJ Maryland. His 16.5 collegiate dominator rating is 49th percentile, so that's not very good. At least in terms of, if you're going to be drafted highly because of your production. His 113.5 speed score, though, is 93rd percentile, so that's very good, to be fair to him. But his 118.8 burst score is only 57th percentile. But one thing to note is, while that 57th percentile might not sound bad, with tight ends, athleticism is everything. You really won't find very many tight ends that aren't super athletes, even by NFL standards, that hit for us. You have to be an insane athlete, even by NFL standards generally. His 10.16 catch radius, though, is 79th percentile, so that's fine. Josh Cuevas, so he ended up having an 18.0 collegiate dominator rating, which is 56th percentile. Not particularly great either in terms of standing out. His 102.9 speed score is 73rd percentile. Not particularly great in terms of what we want from guys that we expect to produce. His 118.5 burst score is 56th percentile as well. Same applies there. His 11.75 agility score is 27th percentile. That is dreadful. So we're going to have to ding him for that. And his catch radius of 9.88 is 29th percentile as well. So in terms of, NFL athleticism, that's not going to help him out. And then we have Riley Nowakowski. So his 9.10 collegiate dominator rating is third lowest in the class, which is only 19th percentile. His 102.7 speed score is 73rd percentile. His 118.1 burst score is 54th percentile. And we don't have any other data from him. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mage Jack, Infamy MTG, AOYOB, The Dawn, and Any Buckeye. Thank you guys. I'm doing this full time now, and without your support, this would not be possible. If you'd like to become a member, I'm going to leave a link in both the comment section and description of this video. You'll receive not only, but including access to a Discord where we have a channel where we have NFL and college football talk, as well as a channel where we have fantasy football talk, and a third channel where we laugh at poor trade offers that we've been offered in fantasy football. But if you'd like to, you can always DM me with private, questions if you don't wish for it to be known by any community members. But you'll also get help with building your fantasy football teams every year. I'll use wins above replacement, as well as just looking at the general lineup and scoring settings to help you with your teams each year. I'll help you with trades that are advantageous based on those factors as well. You'll be part of a fun and growing active community. You'll not only receive access to videos early guaranteed, but you'll also have the ability to ask for personal videos that you and only you can view. Or potentially, if you'd like something to be shown on the channel, you'll have preferential treatment there as well. So please consider becoming a member. I'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video. Now we're going to take a look at some advanced stats here. I'm going to show you 3 players that I was very impressed with. One that it's not exactly concerning, but something of note. And then one player where you should be very concerned with the lack of production. So we begin with Eli Stowers. He's not an early declare. He's going to be 22.9. Now, this isn't as important for tight ends as it is for wide receivers, but, still at the same time, it's very impressive to me when you're able to dominate in college at a younger age, as opposed to being, a 5th-year breakout, being 25, like Hayden Hurst, dominating against a bunch of 18-year-olds. That's just not as impressive to me. And generally could indicate that you kind of more so reached your ceiling and there's not as much room for growth. Not every case is the same, but nonetheless, he was used 8.4% of the time out wide, 66.4% of the time in the slot, and 24.9% of the time in line. So effectively a slot receiver for the most part. But here's what was really impressive. His 2.55 yards per out run were easily best in the class. The next closest was 2.26. And that number is impressive, but 255 easily best, and his 0.13 first downs per out run are tied for highest in the class as well. His 0.15 missed tackles forced per reception is fine. That's kind of average, not particularly great, but not poor either. And his 21.4 breakout age, kind of middle of the pack as well, not particularly great. But at least he broke out. As you'll see with some of these guys, they just didn't. So yeah. Then we have Riley Nowakowski. So he is not an early declare either. I don't have an age. I tried looking it up, but I just couldn't find it. But seeing as he's not an early declare, he's probably at least 22 years old. He was used 9.5% of the time in the out wide, 21.6% of the time in the slot, and 67.2% of the time in line. So mostly an inline tight end in terms of his usage. It had 1.68 yards per out run, which is fine, not particularly dominant. 0.07 first downs per route run, also kind of middle of the pack. But his 0.31 missed tackles forced per reception, that's ludicrous. I mean, that's substantially better than the next highest player. And what would that be? 0.21 missed tackles forced per reception, which is still a very good number, very impressive. But 0.31 is ludicrous. Unfortunately, he did not break out. Then we have Tanner Koziol. So he's also not going to be an early declare. I don't have an age for him either, but he's going to likely be 22 years old or older. He was used 7.6% of the time out wide, 50.9% of the time in the slot, and 37% of the time in line. So effectively a big slot receiver because he was 6'6.5". But his 2.26 yards per out run were second highest in the class and very impressive to me, while also having 0.13 first downs per out run, which is also tied for most in the class. Now, missed tackles forced per reception is 0.03. We're tied for worst in the class, so that is not a very good number. But his 20.7 breakout age is one of the better numbers in the class. Now, one player that's a mixed bag here, with Kenyon Sadiq. The athleticism is some of the best, arguably the best we have ever seen from the tight end position. He's also an early declare, and he's only 21 years old, so that is fantastic. Looking at his deployment, 10.7% of the time out wide, 58.5% of the time in the slot, and 27.7% of the time in line. Now, his 162 yards per out run is fine, not particularly great. His first downs per out run at .09 also is not dominant, but it's one of the better numbers, to be fair. His .16 missed tackles forced per reception is also fine. Not as dominant as some of the other guys, but still not one of the worst numbers for sure. And his 20.5 breakout age is also one of the better numbers, to be fair to him. But one player that some of this alarmed me with Bauer Sharp. He's not an early declare. I'm not sure as to how old he is. He used 4.1% of the time out wide, 36.6% of the time in the slot, and 57.2% of the time in line. His 1.14 yards per out run was one of the worst in this class, as well as his .03 first downs per out run. That's also some of the worst in the class. His .08 missed tackles forced per reception, also one of the worst in the class, and he just didn't break out. I'm going to guess that he's probably more of a blocking tight end as opposed to a receiver style of tight end. But as far as athleticism, as far as production rather, there just wasn't much to look at here. So that is something that slightly concerns me. All right, here is where we have extreme correlation between athleticism and a lack of production at the NFL level. Like I said, I've done 10 plus years of research from every tight end drafted from 2015 through 2025 and now going to be 2026. And I found average burst, speed, and agility scores and charted out the wave drop-off percentage when some of these were not met. And it's highly correlative. And tight ends specifically are significantly impacted if you don't meet one of these, let alone multiple of these. So when the burst score threshold is not met, you see a 33.16 wave drop off. When the speed score is not met, you see a 48.15% drop off, and the agility score is in the middle at 34.72%. Not hitting one of these is almost certain doom for you, and you're just not going to be elite, almost guaranteed, but especially if you don't meet multiple of these. So we know that, Kenyon Sadiq and Eli Stowers, they obviously met these thresholds, so no worries from them. But three players who did not meet these thresholds. RJ Maryland, his 118.8 burst score did not meet the minimum threshold. Then we have Josh Cuevas. He had multiple red flags here. His 118.5 burst score did not meet the threshold. His 102.9 speed score barely met the threshold for that. But his 11.75 agility score did not. So he has two giant red flags here on his profile. And remember that burst score, while it is the least correlative, it's still a 33.16% drop off. But the agility score in the middle as well at a 34.72% is also extremely serious. So you can compound those two variables there. Then we have Riley Nowakowski. His 118.1 burst score also did not meet the threshold, but his speed score did. So those three players are basically off my board almost no matter what. Not that they were necessarily going to be highly touted draft picks, I get it, but there's just no way I'm going to be drafting any of those three players in my fantasy drafts, regardless as to how big the league is and how deep the rosters are. And just to give you a better visual representation, remember RJ Maryland, Josh Cuevas, and Riley Nowakowski did not meet serious thresholds here. So remember with RJ Maryland, he did not meet the burst score, and that is, I would describe as serious. But with Josh Cuevas especially, he had multiple red flags, burst and agility scores. That's severe. There's almost no way I would draft him. And, even if he had produced and was, potentially going to be, a higher round pick, he would be off my board because of this. Having one of these issues is serious, but having multiple, you're just off my board. Unfortunately, Riley Nowakowski, also same deal as with RJ Maryland, where they did not meet the burst scores, which I would describe as serious. But as far as from an athleticism standpoint, everyone else listed here is in the green and they're good to go as far as if they get draft capital and a decent landing spot. And so, yeah, that's the risers and fallers of the combine. I think Eli Stowers and Kenyon Sadiq definitely helped their cases, especially Kenyon Sadiq. I think it's inarguable. He is the most athletic tight end we have ever seen before. Um, just insane burst and speed scores. And then with Eli Stowers, he had a very solid, one of the better 95th percentile speed score. That's still really impressive, even if it's a 4.51. But the 45.5-inch vertical jump and 11.3 broad jump, both are ridiculous, but the vertical jump is just insane. So I think we can expect both to be drafted significantly higher than potentially people thought as of maybe a month or so ago. Maybe not as much with Kenyon Sadiq because he was already mocked kind of as a late first guy, but I'd be shocked if he falls outside the top 20 picks now. But I think Eli Stowers definitely has a case to be drafted significantly higher. And my sleeper of the class is going to be Tanner Koziel. I think that if he lands in a spot where he could actually produce, I think he has the size and the collegiate production to back it up. I'm going to be doing a deep dive on him to get an even more informed opinion on him. But seeing some of those production marks from him really, really impressed me. So he's going to be somebody I'm going to be paying attention to, and I'm going to be conducting a breakdown of. But let me know, who is your sleeper tight end? Let me know below in the comment section. Where are you drafting Kenyon Sadiq and Eli Stowers in your rookie drafts? Let me know below in the comment section. I'll be curious to see what you guys say. But with all that being mentioned, I would like to say thank you to my Patreon members. Without your support, this wouldn't be possible. Thank you. If you would like to, I'm going to leave a link below in the comment section if you would like to join. If you cannot afford to or do not wish to, if you could just like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below, I'd really appreciate it. With all that being said, thank you and have a good day.